everyone. I'm Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading. I am joined by a very special guest today, my husband Jason of Old Blues Chapter and Verse. And we are here today to continue an argument that has been going on since 2005, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? So we just watched over the last week.
Rewatched,
yes, hence the arguing since 2005. The 1995 miniseries of Pride and Prejudice, starring Colin Firth and Jennifer L., and the 2005 feature film starring Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden. And we saw this one in the theater.
Yeah, when we were dating.
Yeah, we weren't even married yet, and but the 1995 one, I watched as it was coming out on A&E. I missed the first night, and then I remember my family was tape recording it off television. And so I remember the second night that it was going to be on, I went and watched the first episode, and then it didn't matter how late I had to stay up. Like, I was definitely going to watch the next 2 hours, because this is about
just over
5 hours long. Yeah. So I was just totally spellbound by this when it came out. And then what was your experience? When did you see this?
I don't remember watching it the first time, but it certainly wasn't when it first aired, but I'm sure it was in college. I'm sure I saw it in college. There was a lot of A&E stuff. Like, my brother and I didn't really watch, like, the Masterpiece Theater stuff, really.
Yeah, but this
in college.
wasn't... This...
No, I know. But so A&E had, like, they had a Jane Eyre, and they had Tom Jones, and we watched those. And I have very clear memories of watching some of those. But I don't actually remember watching Pride and Prejudice the first time. But that could be because my brother... my brother is like a super fan of the Pride and Prejudice miniseries, and so my memories of it have, principally to do with, like, listening to him in the other room by himself, like, cackling with laughter and giggling and just wondering, oh my god, like, what is all the fuss about? But anyhow, so yeah, it was back in the late 90s when I first saw it.
So when we saw the 2005 feature film in the theater, the very next day we were driving to see my family. It was about an hour and a half drive at the time, and we argued the whole way for an hour and a half straight about the differences between these two, and that argument has never really stopped. So we just thought, well, what the heck, like, we'll invite you to join the argument and tell us what you think in the comments section down below. If you don't feel comfortable leaving a comment, you can leave an emoji, or if you enjoy this video, you can give it a thumbs up. So that's a little bit of our history of watching them, which we have watched both of them many, many times.
Yeah, I would say we've watched this a lot more. Yeah, but it'd been a while since we'd seen this one when we rewatched it last night.
So, and the problem is that Jason prefers the feature film with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden, and I am still completely loyal to the A&E BBC miniseries. So
we're here to sort of battle it out, right? I mean, to defend, like, you've got your corner, I've got my corner. I'm correct.
No, I am correct.
So here's the thing, okay? So I put up a poll recently on my on my community tab on my channel, and not very many people answered the poll. I think it was like 20 people or something. And the miniseries version, I asked which version people preferred of these two, and the miniseries version got 3/4 of the votes, which did not surprise me.
Go booktube.
Yeah, it did not surprise me. But I always feel a compulsion to explain why this is the better version of Pride and Prejudice. So I'm going to leave it to you to just an opening salvo to sort of like fire a shot over the bow and give me your initial defense of the miniseries before I launch into my
And I already know some of the things Jason's gonna say, but anyway, we tried really hard when we were watching this, like, not to talk about the movies because in part, like, we have talked about them so many times. When we were each watching each other's favorites, like, we knew which moments were, the other one was freaking out about, that kind of thing. So, okay, so in addition to the miniseries being so much more faithful to the book than the feature film, which Jason says that shouldn't matter, right? But it does matter because it's only a 280-page long book, or at least our edition is only 280 pages. So it's frustrating to me that in a 2-hour movie, they're so... I mean, it has one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature, the book, and yet, like, it was not included in this feature film. There are some parts of the text that are maybe lesser known that are in the script for the 2005 feature film. I think that the miniseries, because it gives itself the time to really get into the nuances of the story and really do those scenes, those famous scenes that we love so much, justice, right? Like, I feel like, stop it. The 2005 film feels so rushed to me. I feel like Matthew McFadden and Keira Knightley are racing through their lines, whereas the miniseries gives time for silences and awkward pauses and things like that. I also think Colin Firth's performance as Mr. Darcy is, as much as I do like Matthew McFadden, I think Colin Firth's performance is just incredible. It really takes multiple watchings to notice these very, very subtle changes of expression on his face. There was one point that I pointed out to Jason while we were watching, and I'm like, Colin Firth is just acting with his eyes right now. Like, his eyes are aglow, and that's the only real difference between, grumpy Darcy and happy Mr. Darcy. And it just, yeah, I don't know. It just fills me with almost as much joy as reading the book itself. So that is my opening arguments, all right?
Arguments. Okay. Well, let me just say at the beginning here that I love both of these, okay? So on the Internet Movie Database, where I rate everything that I see and have done so since the late 90s, you rate on a 10-star scale, and I give both of these a 10 out of 10. That's not to say that I don't have a couple of minor issues with either of them. But the feeling that they leave me with, right, is, I mean, it's pretty wonderful. It's pretty extraordinary. So, okay. So I was thinking about this last night, okay, while we were watching, Joe Wright's film. And, my own opening salvo, okay, would be, if we look at Pride and Prejudice as a story separate from its telling by Jane Austen, okay? If we look at it as a story that, like, existed before Jane Austen was like, okay, I'm going to write this story, okay? And we love it, not so much because of the story itself, but because of how Jane Austen delivers it, right? Like how witty she is and how observant she is, right, et cetera, et cetera.
And Jason has read Jane.
Yes.
Pride and Prejudice.
I have read Pride and Prejudice, and I love Pride and Prejudice as well. So that's part of it. Like when we read the novel, like if we read that same story, the exact same story, and it had never been written before by anyone, if we read it written by Danielle Steele, it would not be the same thing as reading it by Jane Austen, because Jane Austen, as a novelist, she's just extraordinary, right? What she can do with prose, right? Like the level of craftsmanship of the sentences, etc., etc. So the 2005 film version is cinematically what Jane Austen's kind of version of this story is on the page, right? So if someone's gonna make a novel, adapt a novel for the screen, why do it? Okay, so you're translating it into a different art form, right? Like it's cinema at that point.
I appreciate that. It is a different art
So
form.
why do it if the film you're planning on making isn't going to be cinematic in any way, shape, or form? So this is 5.5 hours long. Okay, there is one shot in it. There's a single shot in it that I find really cinematically beautiful.
But do you think that has anything to do with the fact that they knew initially that it was going to be aired on
I don't think that has
television?
squat to do with anything.
All right,
It's still a film, regardless of whether it's made for television or for an IMAX screen. It's still a film. Okay.
We'd love to see this on IMAX.
It's still a film.
Oh my god.
And there is a single shot in this that I find cinematically beautiful. No, what?
I disagree, but anyway, go on.
It's the shot where Darcy first comes to. So Lizzie is there with her aunt and uncle, right? And they're staying adjacent to was it Rosings Park? And
no, Pemberley.
No, it's not Pemberley.
Okay, well, she's not with her aunt and uncle at Rosings Park.
No, yes, she is.
No, she's not.
No, they're not staying there. They're staying near there. And he goes to see her. They're at an inn or something. And he goes to see her.
Lambton.
Okay, he goes to see her, all right? And it's the trip before he proposes to her. Okay, and he goes to see her, and they sit down.
They're staying with her cousin, Mr. Collins, and Charlotte.
Okay, maybe that's where they are. Yeah. Anyway,
Jeez.
They're sitting across from each other, and they're not really saying anything. And that shot it's framed really beautifully. This, on the other hand, okay, was directed by a very young Joe Wright, and from the get-go, from the opening of the film, right, the camera work, the framing, it's so cinematic. Like, it just breathes. It's alive. It's alive in the same way that Jane Austen's prose is alive on the page. This, as much as I love it, this watches like an audiobook. Like, no, listen.
No!
Like this
that is just ridiculous.
Watching this film is like listening to an audiobook. They were so obsessed with getting all of the detail in, et cetera, like, we gotta have the whole story in. I mean, if you're looking at a screenplay, 1 minute of screen time translates to 1 page of screenplay. Okay? So the screenplay for this is longer than the novel is. No, I get it. Like, they want to get everything in.
There are things in the miniseries that are not in the book. The most famous scene in the miniseries of Colin Firth jumping into the
diving
pond,
Colin Firth,
that is not
the wet
in
T-shirt
the book.
Colin Firth.
I can't help it.
We've been places before where there were women swooning and fanning themselves about Colin Firth, half naked in a wet T-shirt. But what I'm saying is, when you're watching a film, it shouldn't just be like, all right, I'm gonna turn the camera on, et cetera, et cetera. And now there is a school of filmmaking that does this that I really do admire. Right, it's mostly films from the 1980s. Directors like James Ivory and Michael Apted, et cetera, et cetera. They have a good script. They have really great actors. They kind of frame the shot. They put the camera down. They turn it on. They let the actors do their work. That can be done really, really, really well. And it is done well here. But this, like I said, I mean, this feels alive, particularly in certain opening ball scene in this, right? The scene where Darcy and Bingley and Miss Bingley all come in, and everybody, you know, is like, oh my God, like they're here. That scene in this feels alive and kind of buoyant, right? In much the same way as the scene with the dance at Fezziwig's in A Christmas Carol. And I really love that, right? So this, like, everything feels so stately in the miniseries. Oh, everything is so stately, and we're dancing, and it's all so perfect. Whereas in this, like, everybody is sweating almost as badly as I'm sweating right now. You know, and you can see that these are people who are exhausted and they're flush with dancing, right? They're you know, the blood is kind of boiling, et cetera, et cetera. And in this, like, you never feel that. Everything is it's all kind of sort of prim and proper, et cetera, et cetera. And this feels like a real world, like a lived in, I don't know, just kind of bubbling, enthusiastic, lively environment. And it never feels that way in this. Like, it just doesn't. All right? Which on some level is fine, but I prefer a film to feel alive, right? And the camera work actually helps with this a great deal.
Well,
the
then
camera's
why,
kind of floating
does
around.
Matthew McFadden, he smiles once after her father gives his consent, whatever, for them to be married, and then there's the
Is he
end.
required to smile more?
No, well, it would be easier to. There's no opportunity to show transformation of character in this 2-hour film.
You don't think he shows transformation of character?
No! Well, aside from the one smile, and then there is the absolutely ridiculous ending of this film, excuse me, where Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy are, I don't know, like, sitting by the pool.
It's like one of those. It's like one of
and-
those Cialis commercials or whatever, where they got the hot tub on the deck, right?
It's so ridiculous and cheesy and corny and not anything. There is stuff in the novel that happens after they move to Pemberley. And so there could have been something like that, but I think it was such a mistake, this whole like, oh, only call me Mrs. Darcy when you're incandescently happy, like, oh,
All right, so I'm not
God.
disagreeing with you. The ending bothered me less last night than it ever has before, but I still don't really like the ending. Okay, but if we're gonna nitpick now, if we're to that stage, the performance by the actress playing Mrs. Bennet in this is genuinely terrible, right?
No.
It's a terrible performance. It's so sorry. It's so shrill, right? It's so shrill. I almost swore there. I stopped myself. There's just, it feels fake. It feels it does. It feels like artifice to me. Whereas this, right, in this, Brenda Blethyn, like, there's a little bit of that to her, but like it's more like her annoying, like the degree to which she's annoying comes from A, drinking too much at the balls, right, and B, just a kind of enthusiasm, right?
She is so that the mother in the 2005 film is so less of an embarrassment than she is in the miniseries.
But that's just it. Like, it doesn't need to be a caricature of embarrassment. This character is a caricature of embarrassment.
No.
This character, all of her sisters, right? In fact, all the sisters in this version they're just a little too much, right? So when I watch this version, when we watch the miniseries,
yes,
I'm left thinking one thing about Lizzie's sisters, including Jane. I'm left thinking, God, they are all really stupid, right? No, seriously, that's what I feel about them. They're all incredibly stupid young women, right, in many ways. And I don't feel that with this.
Okay, I have to say, when we started watching this film last night,
Yeah.
At first, I couldn't, because it's been so long since we've watched it, I was like, who is Kitty and who is Lydia? Because they were both so over the top that it was almost like, is it Carey Mulligan or is it Jenna Malone? Like, I can't.
Well, isn't that kind of the thing? Aren't those two sisters sort of like two halves of one whole? Aren't they like a hydra of idiocy?
But they're not the same person. There should be some distinction, and I just really, I feel like the miniseries does such a great job of showing why Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley's sisters would try to talk him out of marrying into such a family. Like, they are embarrassing. There is genuine, I feel embarrassed for Jane and Elizabeth in watching this. Whereas this, I was like, well, you know, like Mr. Collins is always embarrassing, right? And he's very much less so embarrassing in the film.
Well, I think he's still embarrassing in the film.
But he's not.
Don't do that, Mr. Collins. He'll think it an impertinence. Right? And he's like, oh, Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy, like everybody in the room shuts up, right?
Right, but like the guy who plays Mr. Collins in this is such a greaseball. Like, you can completely understand why no one wants to marry him.
Well, but again, right? Again, so in the novel, is Jane Austen, is she trafficking in caricatures? I don't think she is.
No.
And I feel like the characters in this are much more caricaturish. Not all of them, certainly not Darcy and Elizabeth. Like, I actually feel like the performances by Jennifer Ellen Colin Firth are so subtle and so exquisite, right? They're like the opposite of caricature in some ways. But yeah, Mr. Collins, he's funny, but he's funny because he's a caricature, right? He's like everything he does is like he's just like groveling, right? Like, I mean, there's something over the top about him.
No, well,
you can't deny that there is.
But there are over the top performances in the film as well. I just told you the woman who plays Kitty. I just said her name like 2 seconds ago.
Carey Mulligan?
Yes, Carey Mulligan. Like, her performance is so over the top in comparison. Lydia is the one who should be okay. Lydia's performance can be, you know, over the top. No, I just feel overall, as I've already said, but I'm gonna say it again. Like, this film, like, there could be, and I agree with you, like, as far as, like, cinematic moments, I mean, just here on the cover, if you can see, like, this scene on the bottom part here, where there's this one tree, and, you know, I think it's Mr. Darcy's out walking in the field or whatever, and it's beautiful. It is beautiful. I'm not saying that it's not a beautiful film. Like, that when they're closing up Mr. Bingley's house, that's one of my favorite scenes. Mr. Bingley's house at Netherfield, like, you know, and all the servants covering the furniture and closing the doors, and it really gives you the sense of, like, he's not coming back. So I do think there are beautiful moments in it. It just feels so hurried. Like, everything is, like, cut and streamlined and snip it down. I'm not saying that a feature film has to be, like, an exact... And this is not an exact replication
it's pretty close.
of... It is, no, I just read the book, okay? I'm the one who finished the book this week. So, it's not exactly the same, but I just feel like it... You know, like, there was just these awkward moments between characters, especially Elizabeth and Darcy, and there needs to be, like, this sort of strange, you know what I mean? Like,
you're not saying that there's anything, like, awkward moments between these characters?
There's no silence, because everyone's rushing to the next line.
There's no silence between these characters?
I'm not saying there's...
That scene, the scene after when he proposes to her, and she, like, sort of reads him the riot act, and it's like they're just staring at each other in the rain.
The one in the rain?
Oh, he like wants you, like, he's like, oh, I want to kiss her, like, I need to kiss her, but I can't kiss her.
Right,
because this is the wrong era for that.
Yes, I agree, like, that is a moment that Matthew McFadden's acting is on another level, and like that leaning in. Yes, it's very
and it's
swoony,
all in the face and in the body
and romantic. But the proposal itself, like it's just like like everyone quick. And then we'll have this one moment with Matthew McFadden being quiet and leaning in, wanting to kiss Elizabeth, and then backing up because she's just like destroyed his character, or what she thinks his character to be, and then leaves. And then the whole thing with her like just staring in the mirror and the time passing by, and he comes in and like leaves a letter, and what is that all about? Like that's
compression. Okay?
That was ridiculous.
That's compression. Right, we get back to my original point that hey Blue, that this here is a film and this is a filmed version of a book.
No.
This is a work of art.
Oh no.
This isn't really a work of art. No,
how dare you?
I really love it. The performances themselves I would consider works of art. A couple of the performances anyway. But as a whole, I wouldn't necessarily call this a work of art. Okay? This,
even though you give it a 10 out of 10?
Because I enjoy it. Like, I love the story. Okay? This tells the story really well. It has some really great performances in it. This is visually exhilarating. This is never visually exhilarating. Not in any way, shape, or form. You know, and that's one of the strange things about it too, because the settings are quite beautiful. Right? It wouldn't be that difficult to take this and to do a version of it that is visually striking and visually kind of overwhelming. But they have no interest in that. The interest is only in the story, telling the story well. And a good adaptation, in my opinion, it can't be just about the story. It has to be about the art form itself, about letting the novel breathe within the possibilities of this different art form.
It doesn't let the novel breathe, though. It doesn't.
No, but it like I was saying, that like those scenes where the camera is literally just floating from couple to couple, person to person.
That's because that's Joe Wright's signature of the long shot.
That's his thing, right? Because he is.
I will agree with you. Like that one shot at the Netherfield Ball where they're just tracing. It's basically tracing one embarrassing moment from another. You know, whatever. Until we see Elizabeth Bennet outside, like trying to catch her breath or whatever. And
you know what that does, though. That scene, like it's not.
That compresses.
Yeah, it's not great just because it's technically proficient, right? It's great because it reveals to us so much about so many different characters in hardly any time at all.
Okay, I will give you that. I will give you that one scene, all right? Like, and there are some other.
I can't even fit my finger in the little.
Oh well.
It's like tea for a hobbit.
Well, you can have more tea after we're done arguing about this. Well, which we may never be. Okay, so there are moments in this that I do really love, but I definitely think this is a work of art. I definitely think they did take liberties from with.
Maybe I'm being too. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I've become a caricature of my own view.
First time? I think not.
All right. So like this is never going to be solved as we've seen.
I can't believe you don't think this is a work of art.
I just said that I do. I just said I was exaggerating for effect. I admit it.
All right. Okay. All right.
Yes, it's a work of art.
Thank you.
It's a work of art. But I mean, this for me, this is one of the greatest films of the 21st century.
Oh my God!
This is in my top 100 of the 21st century. Okay, this is not even in the probably top 10 best miniseries I've ever seen, let alone like films, right?
Oh, Jason.
What?
I don't understand how we can watch the same things And I can see it, like I said, like I know exactly which moments in the feature film, like that Jason is just freaking out about. There's this, actually one scene that I find quite swoony. The scene where Mr. Darcy helps Elizabeth into the carriage, and then afterward it zooms in on his hand, and
he takes her hand. She is getting into the carriage, and she's surprised to find her hand in his hand all of a sudden.
He's helping her get into the carriage, and then it zooms in on his hand, and he like stretches out. But later in the film, it zooms in on his hand again, and nothing happens. Like
how he's carrying the trace of her.
Oh, the trace.
On his hand. But so no, you bring up a good point though. You talk about, it zooms in. There is like that's another kind of like cinematic technique, right? Like so this director, I can't remember his name, Simon Langton or something like that.
Yeah.
He seems to have no understanding of what to do or what his camera is capable of. Okay? And Joe Wright is, whether it's zooming in on things, in fact, like the only kind of cinematic moment in this, as far as like the camera work is concerned, the movement of the camera work, is the scene where Mrs. Bennet tells Mr. Collins that Jane is spoken for, but she has these other daughters, right, et cetera, and we have these like little mini like whip pans, like from one daughter to the other daughter, and that's actually funny. That's actually a humorous part, and it's humorous because of the camera work, right? So that's probably the only moment in the miniseries that understands the kind of the possibilities of the art form of cinema.
Well,
whereas this is just like it's flooded. It's just absolutely flooded with visual ingenuity and with visual beauty.
Maybe the director of this one was relying on his cast to provide...
That's exactly what I'm saying he did.
Well, the cast, though, carries it off.
I agree, right? I gave it a 10 out of 10. Largely because of the story and the performances.
I still think there may have been some other, like... I mean, Colin Firth wasn't a star when this was made. Jennifer...
No, it made him a star.
It made him a star, exactly. But I do wonder if they had a different kind of budget than this. I mean, naturally they're,
Oh, I'm sure they had a different budget. Yeah,
well,
TV
so
always
maybe he couldn't do some of the things that Joe Wright had the budget to do.
That's crap. Those are not the things that require budgets.
The thing, though, what I'm trying to say is the thing that makes this great is the nuances, the timing, the pacing of it, as opposed to the film, which is just too hurried.
It's too rushed. It
is too rushed. And I often feel this way about feature film adaptations of books, which we could talk about another one at some point in the future that we also feel differently about.
I'll just end it here. I will say that. Why film a novel unless you're going to indulge the possibilities of filmmaking, right? Like, why do it?
And I would say, why film a novel?
Why not just stage a play and film it?
If you're just gonna fly through it and edit out these scenes that have been what have made it famous. The scene with Catherine de Bourgh coming while they're all in their pajamas in the middle of the night, and she just has this brief little argument.
That was fabulous.
No, and they're all standing outside the door. Nobody asks Elizabeth anything about like, oh, Mr. Darcy, maybe he's in love with you.
Well, no, they do, and she storms off upstairs. She's like, leave me the hell alone.
I just think, like you said, like, so if you're gonna adapt a novel, then, just give it some breathing room. Like, it's just too hurried. And don't, like, cut the novel up so much that then people who come to the novel for the first time are just, where is the line about, like, bewitched me body and soul, which I don't believe any Regency man
that
would have
is
said.
such a great line. Like, I don't care if that's not period correct or not. It's such
and
a beautiful
Mr. Bingley
line.
would have never come in Jane's room
That
while she was
that
sick.
be true.
Another
But he didn't burst in. He wasn't just like, hey, what's up,
that
Jane?
is so inappropriate for the time.
Regardless.
The idea of a single man walking in on a single woman, she's pretty much just in her nightgown. Would you even let me do that? Like, would you allow a man into our bedroom and I'm just in there in my pajamas?
No, Jane's not married. He's the guy that she's going to be married to. So this whole idea of, all right, we're gonna make a film of this movie now. We've got a checklist. We gotta like tick all the boxes. Hey, oh wait, do we have that line? We need that line. Like people love that line. Oh, what about that scene? Oh, we gotta have that scene.
Clearly, right? I mean, the people who made this movie love Jane Austen. They love the book.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you include some of the lines people love, right? Like, I mean, this society of obstinate and headstrong girls.
Yeah, I know that line's it's not in there.
Not in the film.
I know.
So this shirt, if you've only seen Pride and Prejudice the film and you haven't read the book, like, this means nothing.
So is that the objective of a movie then? Should the objective of a movie be?
You're the one that bought me the T-shirt.
No, I know, but should is a film a failure if it doesn't include the iconic lines, right? That are going to get people kind of become touchstones for people.
Couldn't it give him some? Couldn't it give him some of the touchstone lines? Like,
well, was there nothing of the lines from the book in the film? Was there?
All right. Yes, there were. There were, but not the really like. Okay, so like his proposal scene, which is so absurd. It's pouring rain.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. That's Jason's only criteria, right? Like, isn't it more powerful when they're inside and they're in that little cramped room in the miniseries and?
No.
And they get to argue back and forth, but instead, because it's pouring rain, like.
You know what I love about the pouring rain in that scene? I love that it's a physical representation. It's an environmental representation of what's going on inside of Darcy.
Please.
No, don't roll your eyes at that. That's precisely what's going on right there. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Right? Because they live in this time where Darcy, like, it's all repressed. Oh, it's like, it's going to take, it's like, I got to move, all the mountains of the world to get this out of me because I'm not supposed to say these things, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a way for Lizzie to understand what's happening inside him, okay? What's happening inside him is more torrential, it's more intense than even what he's saying, right? Like it's just magnificent. That scene is just absolutely magnificent.
Well, it's been very fun to talk to all of you, and I'm sure the argument will continue after I
let us know what you think.
Turn off the video. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, what your favorite scenes are, even your favorite version, that kind of thing. So tell us all about it. Who won the argument? Or
this is on your channel.
It's a stalemate. It's always a stalemate, isn't it?
I win.
No,
I win.
You do not win, and you never told us about the budgets either.
Well, it's because the information wasn't on there. I didn't. I mean, the information for the budget might be on there for this, but it wasn't on there for that. So, why look?
Well, we would love to hear from you in the comment section down below. So. We look forward to your feedback on our ongoing argument of adaptations of Jane Austen's brilliant Pride and Prejudice. Booktube, remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Adios.